And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Thursday's flying weather graphic for the morning. A lot of VFR here from the central Bering Sea all the way across interior Alaska. Marginal VFR possible up here over the northeast part of the state, and then much more marginal VFR from the Brooks Range on out to the Arctic coast. IFR over here toward Cape Lisburne Point Hope, and a little bit of IFR over toward Chimney-Attu. Southeast coast, nothing but VFR. For the afternoon, about the same pattern, VFR from the Brooks Range here to the Arctic coast with some areas of IFR as well. And some marginal VFR now through the Bering Strait down to St. Lawrence Island. Otherwise, all clear down here to the south. Bering Sea, a lot of VFR there, and then marginal VFR as you head west along the Aleutians. Amchitka Island out to Chimney-Attu with the IFR held back toward the Komondorskis. And otherwise, the Aleutians there, good VFR right up to Kodiak Island. That holds through Friday morning. A little bit of marginal VFR slipping up on just to the east of Kodiak there. Otherwise, VFR all the way out to Chimney-Attu, or actually out to Kiska Island. Chimney-Attu, maybe some marginal VFR. IFR sneaking into the northern Bering Sea and the Bering Strait, and some IFR for the North Slope. With marginal VFR now a little south, or actually south of the Brooks Range there, northern Koyukuk Valley into the Kobuk Valley and the northwest interior. Otherwise, good VFR here along the Yukon River, southward again to the North Gulf Coast, and marginal VFR slipping up to the southern Panhandle. For the afternoon, that comes a little bit farther north there, maybe reaching Petersburg, Wrangell area, Port Alexander, good VFR farther north, North Gulf Coast, VFR. Now, conditions in the central interior coming down with some increasing marginal VFR flying through there, IFR along the central eastern Brooks Range, and also some IFR over the northern Bering Sea. Otherwise, except for possible marginal VFR, just possible marginal VFR for Adak and Atka, looking good for the remainder of the Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula and southern Bering, Pribilof Islands, and again, all of southern Alaska here. Passes for Anatufik and Adigan, occasional marginal VFR flying conditions expected there for Thursday. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR, rainy VFR. Windy, same forecast, VFR in either approach. And Isabel, VFR, Mentasta, and Tanita, both wide open for the day Thursday. Portage, same thing, VFR. Chilkoot and White, a couple more days of VFR. Freezing levels here at the surface, right across Kodiak Island, off the North Gulf Coast, and to the east and south of the Panhandle. Big area, warm air aloft out here over the Bering Sea with upper level high pressure, about 8,000 feet there, sloping down to around 2,000 feet. As you get up along the northwest coast and into the Chukchi Sea. And then for icing, just a slight chance of some maybe isolated moderate rime icing, but just a risk at that here north of the Brooks Range out to the Arctic coast. Otherwise, everywhere else in the state, icing free, or at least none of any significance. All that due to a huge area of high pressure out here over the Bering Sea. We've got north to north or west to northwest winds up to 125 knots there coming across the Arctic coast. And that turns northeasterly at about 100 knots across Prince William Sound, the Alaska Peninsula, Kenai Peninsula area, and Kodiak Island, where it's about 115 knots. Trough here, and then southwest flow, 75 knots, and across the central and southern Panhandle. Coming down to 9,000 feet, same pattern there. Stronger winds here across the north slope, up to 50 knots there out of the west. And then it kind of turns around northeasterlies. 45 increasing to 70 knots for the Alaska Peninsula area, and then out to the west it comes up from the southeast and south at about 60 knots. While the southeast coast, this elevation, not much in the way of wind conditions, pretty light. And 3,000 feet, 65 knots out of the northeast right across Yakutat. Otherwise, areas of 45 knot east-northeasterlies there for the Panhandle. Central eastern Arctic coast, west-northwest, 40 to 50 knots. That should be 40 knots, not a 48 knot, but give or take there. Otherwise, 45 to 50 knot winds for the Aleutians right up into the southwest part of the state there. Light westerlies at 25 for St. Lawrence Island. Turbulence, a lot of moderate turbulence expected tomorrow here across southern Alaska, Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula, and the Aleutians all the way out to Kiska Island. And also for the western Arctic coast, Point Lake, Cape Lisburne, Point Hope, into the Lisburne Hills there. And also here Yakutat and the northern Panhandle.